Zach, we'll just dive right in. And this is going to be interesting because I don't know a lot about this story too. So
Okay.
I'm going to be kind of learning and picking your brain for the first time. But I do know that you work with Andrew Taylor. You built a pretty big agency. So why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about how you got here, and kind of what, well, how you got here, and then what attracted you to Family First Life, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so my journey kind of began actually back right out of high school. In fact, I didn't actually go to college. So, if you did, great. If you didn't, no big deal. But I did not go to college. That was one thing that I knew I didn't want to do. I just knew I wanted to own a business. Now, I didn't know what I wanted to own. So that was kind of the learning curve, was figuring out what I wanted to do within that realm. So I kind of jumped into construction actually first. I quickly found that wasn't going to be long term. It taught me the discipline. There were things that I learned from it, but moved out of that, got into sales. Started out actually selling cable for a little while. So just to kind of give you a little bit of something, next time someone says they can't afford $200 a month, please question that, because if they have cable, like that's how much cable is, right? I mean, that's why I sell value in home. Just coming from these other things that I was selling at that time, people would sign up for stuff like that left and right. So anyways, moving beyond that, past cable, went into solar. Solar was something that I enjoyed it. The money was good, but the door knocking was really hard. I got pretty tired of getting the door slammed in my face and not really having anything to build besides like my own, my own bank account. So was looking around for other things and got approached actually by a family member to get my insurance license. And I was like, yeah, might as well try it. I mean, the money's good. So I, got into it and started out with a company before coming here to Family First. Again, I think I'm not going to mention names, and I think there's a learning experience to everything, but it was a company that I was at 30% comp, bait and switch leads, or selling friends and family. I mean, it was kind of whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever you could do to get a deal. And then you'd have to wait like 2-3 weeks to actually get paid from it. So, and then sometimes it'd get declined. So you did all that work and then, you didn't actually get anything out of it. So there was a lot of things that were kind of working against me that I didn't like about the company. And I decided to actually, believe it or not, decided to start college because I thought, okay, maybe I'm just supposed to go to college. So I started one semester, did well, but then again, back in my mind, I was just like, I don't want to do a 9-to-5. Like that just doesn't fit me. Like I can't see myself in a 9-to-5. Like I can't hold one down. So I actually, at that time, I got approached by Family First, luckily, and went to a meeting, got to meet with Sean Mike, Andrew Taylor. This was all in Utah, by the way, which is where I'm from. And was just able to see the culture. I think that was really the best part about it, was see the culture, that everyone was one big family, and seeing that everyone was training in that room to truly give you things to help you succeed, which at the other place, it was like if you weren't on their team, they're not talking to you, like you were totally separate from them. So I think that was the initial thing that caught my attention. But then of course, the high comp, the leads, all that stuff, I'll be honest, I thought it was too good to be true coming from what I came from. So it took me a while to get started here. I know that's a long story, but it took me a little while to get started here. It took me about 6 months actually and this is speaking to any of you that are doing this, please relate to this. And I'd change this in your own self before it gets to this drawn out process like myself. It was 6 months that I was just, basically I'd buy the minimal amount of leads. So it was like $400 I'd spend in a week. And I was hoping to get 5K out of it every single week, right? So I just stretch them out. And if I didn't actually get that 5K, I would use them again the next week and not buy new leads. So it was this constant kind of hamster wheel of, I was hitting about 15K per month after issue. But then also you deal with, little things like chargebacks, and it happens, right? But like when you're not writing enough business, like it's hard to combat. So my first 6 months was definitely a long, drawn out period. But after that 6 months, I went to annual convention and again, just saw the belief and how real this company was. And it kind of sold me a little bit more on it, because at the time I was working part-time and came in full-time. And from there, it was just all upward from there. So it was quite the journey, but glad to have found a place for myself and my family,
Yeah, I think we can probably end the call there. I think the first 10 minutes. I mean, you said so much.
Yeah.
You touched on leads, you touched on the culture, you touched on delayed credit, like you touched on it all.
Yes.
But you started off were you doing something else, or you were just working part-time?
It was actually, so it was working part-time, right? I mean, how can you work off of 20 leads full-time? Like you can't, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, I always talk to that agent that's like, wanting to buy the minimal amount. Well, I used to do that, right? And if you buy 20 leads and you expect 30 appointments, it's impossible, right? In fact, even trying to get 20 appointments out of 20 leads is impossible. Maybe you'll get it. I mean, a slim chance, but you need more than enough to make things work with this. So that's something I didn't quite grasp. Again, I came from free leads and low comp. So here it was like the idea of buying was hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. So, and I made that, well, I wasn't sure, but I'm glad you made that distinction that you were full, like this was the only thing you did. So in your mind, you were full-time, but looking back, you were actually barely part-time because of the amount of leads that you had, the amount of appointments that you're running. And I think, and you said it flat out, don't make that same mistake, because you did it for 6 months as a new agent. They think that buying $100, $200 worth of leads and having 30 leads to dial from is going to work, and they wouldn't dare do that anywhere else.
And I think it's easy to convince yourself that you're working full-time when you're self-employed, but really you're not working full-time. Like you really need to question that, because I like what Sean actually brought up one time, that drive time is not working.
Right.
Drive time is not working. So if you actually track your hours of how much you're working, that means actually dialing, knocking on a door for a door knock, or sitting with a client, or hiring if you're doing that, then that's working, right? And at that time, I calculated it was probably 15 hours a week. Like it was pretty bad. But then I'd sit there and like tell myself, no, I'm working so hard. Like I'd even call my upline and be like, well, I'm working really hard, but I'm not getting the results I want. And
it's 15 hours when they flat out tell you that if you're self-employed, you should be working 50, 60 hours.
Exactly.
And people still convince themselves that they're working.
Exactly.
That's hilarious. The other thing that you said you've been here, you did that for 6 months. How long have you been here?
I've been here 1 year and 6 months.
So 1 year and 6 months. Hall of Fame your first year?
Yep, Hall of Fame my first official calendar year of working full time.
Cool. So Hall of Fame your first year, and you have an agency. What's your agency doing?
We're at about 200. I've been focusing more and more on that now, but we're at about 200,000 a month.
So a lot of people, and I'm sure you did too, starting off, looked at people who had agencies doing 150, 200, 300, and were like, man, like they are really hauling ass.
Yes.
And now looking back, you're like, okay, next.
Yeah.
So
like on to the next.
Right. So talk to us about getting started building, because I mean, 1.5 years, 200,000, everybody's not Dave Witcher. 200,000 is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you admittedly took the first 6 months off. We'll just call it what it is. What are some of the things that you did to get from 0 to 200K, as far as warm market, cold market, resources, and how you kind of structure your hiring efforts?
Okay, so first, I think what helped me initially, just for anyone who's out there, watching this, I would tell you that you have to lead from the front, right? Like for me, I was like, it helped me tremendously the second I started writing business. When I wasn't writing enough business, it was harder to build because then it was more like talking about it, but I wasn't showing it myself, right? So as soon as I started showing, 50, 40, 75, 100K in a month, all of a sudden people are like, what the heck? Like I've got to get to work, right? Like I want to do that too. And that's the thing is if you show that, then it creates this belief that they can do it too, right? Because I'm not special. Like any single one of you in here could do that same thing. So the thing that you have to build is that belief that it can be done, right? The next thing that I would tell you that helped me in the hiring efforts was utilizing not only your warm market. So like I had friends that started, and what the coolest part is it was able to change their life too. One of my guys, Colton Mitchell, totally changed his life. Now the guy can go write 50K in a week. Like he just got back from a trip, 50K in a week. Like it's no big deal. And I think that it's again, Wayne, we go back to perspective, like you were just talking about. We think that's a lot until it's done. And then it's like, actually, that really wasn't that deep.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what I would tell you is change the little things. So belief. The next is with hiring. If you build your own warm market, right, and also utilize cold, off of the warm market, people like Colton are more willing to listen, right? The cold market, it's a little bit harder, right? You don't really know them, right? So you've got to connect a little bit more. But the nice part about your warm market is that you can work through their warm market too. So as soon as Colton and all these people had success and started posting about it, then their warm market started coming in too. So now it's like this effect that just kind of trickles down. But then cold market, what I'd tell you, honestly, ZipRecruiter, I do pretty much everything you can possibly think of. I mean, I even do like, sometimes I'll try to do a boost on Facebook just to try and get more views. But for the most part, it's ZipRecruiter, Career Builder. I like ZipRecruiter probably the most out of them all. I just buy a lot of slots. But then, I mean, other than that, again, it's just kind of working through your cold market, the cold market that you get, work through their warm market too. So.
Okay. Now, do you set aside specific times to recruit? Are you recruiting in between appointments? Are you staffed up to recruit? Like, what's that look like for you?
So I'm staffed up now, but when I was just getting things like the ball rolling, I was the slow starter with everything. It was leads was a problem, finally wrapped my head around it. Then it was, hiring, spending money on hiring. Then I finally wrapped my head around it. And then staff was like, I just didn't have this belief that I, wanted to spend the money on staff until I did it. And I was like, wow, that actually is really helpful. So what I would tell you is before you have staff though, before I had staff, I was doing things in between appointments and also on my dial days. So I would take like an hour on my dial day to go ahead and, have maybe already had interviews set up from the day before, or, it's just cold calling through those leads that I have. So.
Okay. Now, you said something pretty interesting, and I think that a lot of people miss it. What you said, you started writing because it increased your belief level, and I know just from the various conversations and the different people, like they say that the best time to talk to people is in between appointments, because good or bad, the impact that you'll have on somebody at that specific moment is completely different than the day sitting in the office when none of those things are happening, because either you just sold something and you're high, or you didn't just sell something and you're talking to them about the real life of the business, or even re-talking yourself into the business and why it works as you prepare yourself for your next appointment.
Yes, so true. The other thing too is that hiring during that day of appointments, it gives you, like, if let's say the day just went bad, right? Like you got no show, no sales. Well, if you have a lot of calls set up for hiring too, it's going to give yourself that belief again, because it's like now you got those little wins again. So those little wins add up, you know, and it kind of rebuttals against the loss of your day.
Yeah. So I know you took 6 weeks or 6 months to start. After that 6 month, I don't want to call it a hiatus because it was at the beginning. Did you start hiring right away?
No.
At that point you were all in. So when did you flip that switch and actually start hiring?
So hiring was another, again, everything I took too long on. So first it was leads, next it was hiring. So that first initial start of 2020 after annual convention, it was more, the focus was more about me. I openly admit that I was more selfish at that time. It was more about making my own bank account grow, you know, not really worried about helping others grow like I was, but I wasn't. It was just a more selfish time. And I quickly learned from the mentors around me and the people around me that that wasn't the route that I wanted to go. It started kind of feeling empty. And at a certain point, I'd say about 5 months in after annual convention, so obviously it took a little while, I then started putting more time and effort into hiring because I saw how, wow, this actually changed my life. I'm 22 and I have no college degree. It's selfish of me not to share this.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So
22 with no college degree.
Right. And making, you know, $500,000, more than $500,000 last year. It's like, well, that's unheard of, dude. Like we have to share that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me, it was like, once I wrapped my head around that, I was like, okay, I need to stop being selfish and I need to start sharing this. And also, I don't want to have to go write 100K a month for the rest of my life. I'm just being honest. Like I don't. It's a lot of work. Like I used to think working a lot was, you know, the full 15 hours a week. No, working a lot is like when you're writing 100K a month, that is working a lot. Like there's a lot of appointments, 40 appointments a week, I would say, if you really want to be doing 100K a month, like it's a lot of work. So you know, as far as the building the business side, it's a good way to also not feel like you have to do that for the rest of your life, you know. And I've always been into coaching, but I just didn't quite realize that I could do it through this.
So it's funny that you said that, and you said something. You said talking to your mentors, that if you're not selling it, you're being if you're not sharing it, you're being selfish. And then you just end it with you were always wanted to coach. So talk to us a little bit, because I don't think we talk enough about it. And I know you work with one of the best in the business. And for those of you that don't know, Andrew Taylor, before he got introduced to insurance, was bagging groceries. So, I mean, when we say anybody can do this, like not to discount anything that Andrew did, because he's like bar none, literally best in the business. But I mean, he was a kid bagging groceries when he started. I mean, now he's still, in my eyes, he's a kid because he's still so young. When you really sit back and think about it, but I mean, he's still Andrew Taylor. So talk about the importance of mentors, how he kind of shaped your perspective on this business. And then because you like coaching, when you were conscious of the fact that you were transitioning from the mentee to a mentor to these group of people that obviously 200,000, somebody's looking up to you saying, Zach's the top of the totem pole for me. So talk to us about that kind of evolution and what those conversations sounded like and what that transition kind of looked like for you.
You know, there were some conversations that were more deep, and there were others that were like, dude, get to work. Why are you not working? So it was like, it was a transition of, at the start, it was kind of more focused on trying to, again, it was getting up my belief in the business itself again, because I lost it. So due to the company I came from, right? So the company I came from, I started to lose belief in the industry. So I kind of had to build that back up in myself. So mentors around me, they were more focused on, okay, let's get you to go write real quick so you can see what it can do for yourself. So for me, it was like, okay, I went out, wrote, and I saw that amount of money. And so, again, it got addictive. So for a second, it got addictive to where I wasn't focused on helping others. But then I started having these conversations, I'd say every week, at least once a week, with Andrew, and he started talking about like, are you wanting to keep running a lemonade stand, or you want to run a business? Like, and that kept sticking with me. It was like, lemonade stand or business. Like, I think it's a no-brainer, but like for me, again, it was like the idea of staff, the idea of hiring leads, the idea of all that kind of scared me. So it was constant follow-up. I mean, the evolution of it was constantly being on a coaching call, at least I would say once a week. If I was, when I was actually serious about it, that slowly got me to finally understand the power of spreading this to other people. But then also it kind of brought back to play from, again, during all growing up, I played a lot of sports. I was captain of a competitive hockey team. And it was, for me, I liked that. I liked being kind of captain to coach and help, and not only in, what they're doing, but also mentally preparing, right, for the game, mentally preparing for the field, right? So that kind of stuff always kind of spoke to me. But then Andrew kind of brought that in on like, dude, that's what agents want. Like that you need, like, that's exactly what it takes to build a business. So I was like, wow, okay, that was pretty easy to answer that question. But like, it was pretty simple, but it was just kind of a long drawn out process,
Yeah. You said the full spectrum. So you and Andrew pretty much talked about everything. Like you kind of went to him for everything and everything. I'm sure it's even some things that didn't necessarily have to do with business, but that you came to find out actually did affect the business more so.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I'm sure if it's anything like my relationship with Mark, it ended up being kind of something that you sought out, as opposed to sitting in the corner, just going to work and trying to figure things out on your own. And it probably dramatically changed your business when you started to realize that it's not unique to you, that these are things that everybody goes through, and that if you talk about them, you can kind of shorten the learning curve and condense time frames, and started to do that more often.
Exactly.
So now, how did that affect your ability to kind of build and eliminate, or your desire to build and eliminate some of those same obstacles for the people that you brought in?
That's actually, a great question. So it was kind of, I was able to take the things that I knew I messed up on and try and condense it into like a short, sweet, you could say, I don't even know how you would even like bundle, right? Of like, okay, here's my mistakes. Here's what I messed up on. So like I already said on this call, I bought the minimal amount of leads to get the most out of, right? It was not willing to invest in myself, not putting the amount of effort and time into it. I mean, there were so many aspects. So I kind of brought that all in, and I openly tell people when they get started, like, this is how I was. So, if you follow this path, you'll take a while like I did, or you can try and skip that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. I think a lot of times newer agents think that we're just talking at them, or we're just talking in some cliche, because a lot of things, until you come to this industry, they are cliches, because they typically don't apply to the W-2 world. They only apply to this 1099 self-employed world. So They don't realize how impactful it is, and how applicable it is for you to take Andrew's teachings, make them your own, apply them to your own situation. Now you have Andrew's teachings and Zach's teachings. So you're just kind of, if you think of a snowball rolling downhill, like as they go from leader to leader, it's just this collective of obstacles that you're eliminating for that next person. And I think a lot of times new agents undervalue or maybe underappreciate those conversations, not realizing that that's really all we're trying to do, is kind of help shorten the learning curve so that they can be that person that comes in and writes 40K in their first month.
Well, I think some people even undervalue everything that Family First Life has, because
Oh,
a lot of
100%.
us might come from being unlicensed straight to licensed and come right into Family First. Well, I can tell you, you're lucky you found Family First, because
That's me.
if you found another company, you may or may not be here anymore.
Right.
So that's where it's the company I came from. Again, it was totally opposite, right? And seeing, I think that's what sometimes helps is for an agent that is brand new, kind of explaining what this industry really is like compared to what we have. That way we can create that understanding, because it is easy to take it like for granted what we have here. It's very easy to do, and complain about things that really we should not be complaining about, right? I mean, that's just bottom line. And like, for example, one that I know, that my previous company, it was one company and a few products, right? So everything had to go through them. So they did have an underwriting guide that was like super, like you just plug it in and everything is done for you, right? Now that's not here. And I think that's why I'm bringing this up. It's like one of those things that you have to remember that was 30% comp. They had this system. It's nice and all, but then I'll see agents come in here and complain about, why don't we have that system? Well, aren't you happy you went from 30% to 100? Like, isn't that like, can we just figure out that part, but like you forget about the system part? Like, let's just remember what we have, you know?
Right.
So that's what spoke to me. So
good deal. Well, Zach, if you have a couple of minutes, I'm gonna open it up to some questions. Obviously, I mean, you and I could talk forever, and we probably should do this more often. But I'm going to open it up to some questions. I know somebody's jumping at the bits, and I can almost put money on who's going to have the first question. But I'll open it up. So just unmute yourself and just ask your question.
I hope you ain't put money on me.
It was honestly, it was either you, Craig, or Sam.
My question is, how are you standing out on ZipRecruiter and Career Builder?
So the way I do it is make every ad a little bit different and remember to post a lot. They're not, the thing is with Family First, at the end of the day, they're all going to look somewhat similar because they're all, you know, offering high comp and fresh leads and things like that. So the way you can kind of stand out is talking a little bit more about kind of what your agency has to offer and kind of make it a little bit more personalized rather than just an overall, just to try and get a little bit different. But again, at the end of the day, that's why I buy so many slots, because they're going to be similar. So it's hard to truly separate yourself when all the agencies are Family First, and Family First is the best. I mean, what can you really do, you know?
Zach, how often do you refresh your posts on Zip?
I try to do it at least, probably say once every 2 weeks, maybe even more.
Okay.
I have a question. I was going to ask you, Zach, mindset wise, what do you do that helps you, I guess, stay focused and stay focused and be successful?
So mindset wise, I think that one of my major things is trying to make sure I keep the gym a part of my life. I know it sounds cliche, but it's just the gym is important. But also,
wait, not to interrupt, because I know Kevin personally. He's just about the same age as you. You said keep the gym. What time do you go to the gym?
I try to get there at 4:30 a.m.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I would tell you is, mindset wise, the biggest thing is when you have those ups and downs. I think Paul McLean touches this all the time, but when you have those ups and downs, just remember to stay in the middle, right? Because you're going to get a sale. That's awesome, right? But at the end of the day, they're a lead. They filled out their request. You shouldn't really be hyping yourself up that much. I mean, it's not that hard, you know? But then also if it goes down and they don't close, well, it's like, okay, I have more appointments, no big deal. I'm just going to move on, right? So it's just keeping that level head and not going through this roller coaster of emotions. That was the main thing for myself this last year.
Yep, 4:30 a.m., Kevin.
Got it.
What else you guys got?
So,
Hey, Zach, go ahead.
if you're giving advice for somebody just starting out on hiring, the cold market, is ZipRecruiter the best place to start? And how much would you recommend putting into it?
ZipRecruiter, I would say, that's a good question. Best place to start. I would also say if you haven't utilized your warm market at all, I would. So I would try and use your warm market a little bit, and just posting a lot, because you can do things for free, right? Like you could do posts on social media, and just by working with the algorithm, it's going to work in your favor more. But ZipRecruiter would definitely be a great place for actual cold, like clean cold marketing, just because it's going right directly to people looking for a job, right? And I would be, did you ask about spend? Sorry, I went blank.
Yes.
How much would you spend? Okay. I would set aside at least $1,000 a month if you really want to be like trying to push people through and onto your team, if not more. But that's where I'd probably start out, is, you know, about $1,000. Maybe if you have to do 500, you have to do 500, but just like try to get something in there. That way you get these consistent flow of people every month.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, how you doing, man? So what outside of the CRM, what's your favorite lead vendor?
Outside of the CRM, I honestly, that's really hard to say, because I love the CRM. The instance I use a lot now. They weren't around for forever. You know, when I was at the beginning of 2020, I didn't have those. So I was actually using Lead Gurus and also Game Time a lot more than I am now. But now that I have Instance, I don't really use them as much. I really do focus a lot on Instance, but sometimes I'll mix in, if I just need more leads, I'll mix in something from Lead Guru or Game Time.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Zach, I have a quick question.
Yep.
In term, you know, there's a lot of new agents on this call. I just want to give them, they may or may not know how to set their week up for success. What kind of, how many leads do you purchase, and what do you spend on leads to set yourself up for, say, 30, 40 appointments a week?
So first off, to talk about spending really quick, you have to remember, like Stephen Giordano, to write 100K a month, he talked about it too. Anyone can do it, because, and I truly believe that. If you ask Stephen how much he spends on leads, I mean, he spends probably about 10 grand a month on leads. So for a lot of you, you're probably like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. Well, he's making a lot of money. Do you think he really cares? No. So it's like, you have to have the perspective of, if I'm spending, it's not a cost, it's an investment, right? So if I'm spending $1,000, $2,000 a week, I can definitely expect to go right 40K that month. You know what I mean? So I'm spending about 1,500 to 2 every single week. And that is making sure that I have at least, I would say 60 leads in my hands on a dial day or more, to make sure that I can get my appointments. But my dial days are 2 days a week, Monday, Thursday. And then in between those dial days, I'm in the field.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, Sam.
I have a quick question. When agents are starting off, right, and you look into the CRM, we have quite a bit of people where we're at right now, Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area. So when you're looking at the CRM and you're looking at like instant, you're looking at new internet life leads, second chance leads, and you're looking to run, I know this was a problem for myself when I started off, like diversifying my lead spread to where I was running all over the place. So what would your recommendation be for a new agent coming in and looking for leads, where to look for leads, trying to pinpoint a certain area, or just go wherever the leads are available?
Go where the leads are. I'm not the one to ask on that because I was like, just so you guys know, Utah is probably the most saturated place in the entire US. So I was dealing with vendors like Lead Guru and Game Time. They got to a point where they told me, no, you can't order. Like they can't do it because there's not enough people. The population's too small. There's too many agents. Like it just doesn't work. So for me, I had to go to where the leads are. So for any agent that says, I don't want to drive, well, maybe this isn't for you. I'm just being honest, right? Because for me, if I'm driving and I made $500,000 in a year and I drove as much as an Uber driver, do you think I really care? No. You know what I mean? So like drive where the leads are, because I promise you, if you drive and you've got the lead flow, it will always work out. But if you're trying to only work in your backyard, it's going to be really hard because they're just, sometimes there might be enough, right? But a lot of times, depending on your area, there might not be. So you're going to have to work kind of in a circular flow around your county, right? So I was driving all over the place just to hit my 10K per week minimum.
Okay, but
Hopefully that answers.
Hey, Zach, I want to, I'm going to end it there. I know you need to get back to your day.
Yep.
And I'm sure I need to get them back on the phone, but I appreciate you taking the time to pour into our team. Guys, any questions that you have? Zach is on Facebook. Reach out to him. He's not hard to find. And I'm sure he'll gladly respond to your message in a timely manner as his day permits. But Zach, any parting words for them as they get started? Go jump back on the phone or go jump into hiring. Anything that you can leave them with to just start with, just the next step for them?
Yeah, your next step today, honestly, what I could leave you with is remember today is a dial day. So you are going to get no's. I'm just saying it to you because it's going to happen, right? There are going to be people that say no, and that's okay. So what I would remind yourself of is the goal of 15 appointments, and don't think about anything else, because if you're so focused on, your dial count and things, you start to overwhelm yourself. Just focus, or how many no's you got, just focus on the yeses. So if you got 15 appointments, that's all that matters. Who cares about everything else that happens? So I'd tell you, just keep the head down, dial, and get your 15.